Hello everyone and welcome to another video from the Tiny Menagerie. Pearl danios are a classic starter fish, which is basically a species that's well known for being very hardy as well as very cheap. And they are hugely popular in the hobby, and that is despite the fact they are not exactly the prettiest of fish, nor actually the cheapest, nor actually are they the easiest to keep. And so, what is it about the Pearl Danio that has allowed them to maintain such an appeal with beginners? Well, Danio albolineatus, also known as the Pearl Danio, originates from the streams of Sumatra through Thailand, where the waters they inhabit tend to be fast-flowing, well-oxygenated and often lined with vegetation. Here they can be found in shoals from a couple hundred strong up to several thousand, and this is a need for their own species that continues into being kept in an aquarium as well. They are a true shoaling species, and you'll want to keep them in a group with at least 6 individuals, and if at all possible, with more females than males, as this is how they show their best colours. Although I should point out actually that picking individual sexes in a shop is virtually impossible unless you can find adults for sale, because when they're juveniles they are identical to each other. But anywho, hopefully you will be able to get yourself a mix of sexes, as like this you can really appreciate just how underrated that beauty really is. On first glance, the Pearl Danio appeal rather dull, little more than a greyish sliver of fish with little to make them stand out, especially against their rather flashier, stripy cousins, the Zebra Danios. And in all honesty, in a well-lit tank, this will often remain the case as they will bleach their colours in an attempt to blend in with their surroundings. But in a dimly lit tank, you will really start to see why these fish are called Pearl Danios, true Pearl Danios, unlike the little pretenders that are the celestial Pearl Danios. These true pearl fish shimmer and shine in the light. They are just the same as a pearl. They have that fairly monochrome base colour with this wonderful iridescent sheen that shimmers across them and changes in different angles of light. They sport pinks and turquoises and purples in their body, as well as yellow streak that runs along the lateral line down towards their tails. And it's this hidden beauty that I find so appealing about them, and I suspect that is the case for the rest of their keepers as well. Luckily, Pearl Danios don't get very large, and even a big female is only going to reach about 1.5 to 2 inches, with males generally being a little bit smaller and a little bit slimmer. Although, as they are an extremely active species, that doesn't mean they can be kept in a small aquarium. Quite the contrary, in fact. Pearl Danios are constantly on the move. Perhaps not quite as frenetically as Zebra Danios, but they are still highly active and often swimming together as a shoal. For this reason, they do need space, and as a minimum you should look to provide them with a tank that is at least 1 metre in length, just to give them adequate space to swim around. They tend to stick to open water, and they will go up to the surface for most of their time, but they will also use all of the area of the tank, swimming amongst foliage and around ornaments, and they'll also take food from the substrate if they can find it there. And so, to get the most from your fish, it is worth giving them a varied tank to live in, with a mixture of open spaces and obstacles to keep them entertained. And certainly they do very well in a planted tank, but they're not fussy at all, and they are perfectly happy in a tank that just has hardscape or plastic decorations. In fact, they are remarkably brave, and one of the few types of Danio that I actually find really easy to catch. Most are zippy little devils, and they are a pain to net out. But pearls, they seem quite oblivious and are very easily caught. Not that you would likely need to move them very often, as, like a lot of the other Danios, pearls are seriously hardy, and they will tolerate all but the foulest of water in a wide range of conditions. The pH can be anywhere between 6 and 8, with a temperature anywhere between 20 and 27 degrees Celsius, and so in your average heating home, they don't normally need a heater of their own. They are slightly more choosy about water flow, and as they originate from fast-flowing streams, it's perhaps hardly surprising that they do seem to really relish a good current. In fact, as I don't run the filters on my tanks all of the time, I do sometimes find they look a little bit lethargic, lurking around in the deeper areas of the tank, and then when the current comes back on, they dash in and out of the flow, looking for all the world like they are playing. And so I wouldn't keep them in a tank that has completely still water all the time, because if you can give them a good current every now and then, they really do seem to appreciate it. As I said, when it comes to water quality, pearl danios are phenomenally hardy. No light for 2 months because you've been flooded, they'll be fine. No heating either, they will be fine. Water changes with straight tap water, they will be fine. No water changes, they will be fine. Pearl danios just might be indestructible. Although of course when I say fine, what I mean is they are tolerating poor conditions while they await better ones. Danios live naturally in streams in hot countries that are prone to flash floods and baking sunlight, and so the fish have evolved to tolerate being stranded in a pool that's separated from the main stream. A pool that is slowly evaporating away and becoming increasingly stagnant while they await the inevitable rains that will bring them back to the main waterway. And so they can withstand a very wide variety of different conditions in an aquarium, and they're not going to drop dead as soon as the conditions are not perfectly to their liking. This doesn't mean that you can neglect them, obviously. It just means that they are very forgiving of the sort of mistakes that new fish keepers are likely to make, like adding too much food or leaving the lights on continuously for a long time, something like that, anything that could change those water parameters quickly in a young tank. Having said that though, if you do find your fish numbers are getting a bit low, then you can find out for yourself just how easy this species is to breed. In fact, if you're considering having your very first go at raising an egg-scattering species, then I would heartily recommend trying the pearl danio first. Females are absolute egg factories. They lay every single day when they're in good condition, and I find that they spawn in both the evening and the morning, and they're perfectly happy using a spawning mop, and the fry are large, easy to feed, and just about as hardy as their parents. If anything, you'll probably find out you end up with way more fry than you intended, as spawnings of over 100 eggs are not unheard of. Luckily though, as they're so popular, giving them away is never a challenge, and most small retail fish stores will gladly take healthy young stock from you. And so, you can keep hold of the very best of the spawn to add to your own numbers, while passing a load of them on as well for somebody else to enjoy. Much like a lot of other fish, pearl danios will happily eat their own eggs and fry given half a chance, and in fact they are fairly voracious hunters of anything smaller than themselves. They'll eat any fish small enough to swallow, and they will actively attack and hunt shrimp that they see swimming that attracts their attention. And this includes adult Neocaridina shrimp, so they are definitely not to be classed as shrimp safe. They can also be very nippy of fins, although I have usually found this is restricted to their own kind. Mine often have chunks missing out of their tails, especially if the males have been fighting over spawning rights. And yet they've never taken so much as a nibble from any of my bentosi tetrafins, despite how very tempting they must look. This doesn't mean though that I would try to keep my pearls in with fish that have very soft fins, like bettas or guppies or anything like that, as I feel that would be asking for trouble. And luckily, pearl danios do actually eat other things as well as fry and each other's fins. They are in fact very keen feeders who will consume anything you offer to them, from cheap flakes through to live blackworms. They are also very fast feeders who dart around, scooping up all the food that they can find, and they'll take food from the surface and the substrate and just about anywhere else as well. And so though, if you're keeping them with very slow feeders, smaller cichlids for example, then you might want to watch just to make sure everybody is actually getting a share of the food and it's not all going in the danios. Overall though, pearl danios have that wonderful combination of being cheap, readily available to purchase, very hardy, very easy to feed, and very, very easy to breed. And so perhaps it's actually little wonder they're so popular with beginner fish keepers, and experienced keepers as well for that matter. Anywho though, I hope you've enjoyed this little video all about pearl danios. Happy fish keeping everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye!